There is some separation between Brandon Rose and Nate Johnson, but how much separation is there? And where does Bryson Barnes fit into the Utah quarterback battle? We're talking about that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. If this is your first time joining us on the show, make sure you guys like and subscribe. We can't thank you enough for your support. Also, you can hit us up on social media. I'm at JT Wistrcill, or you can go to our Locked On Utes feed at Locked On Utes and message us on Twitter. On today's show, we're talking all things spring ball, the quarterback battle, some of the other positions standing out, and a little bit Utah women's basketball news at the very end. And in order to help us do all of that, it's friend of the show, Sammy Morra. Sam, starting with spring ball. Brandon Rose, look, Coach Witt alluded to it. There's a little bit of separation amongst the quarterbacks, but also how big is the separation? I think that's what everyone's kind of wondering, interesting. And we both had the opportunity to see spring practice. You've been able to go to all three practices overall, and especially in terms of an accuracy standpoint from what we've seen so far, it does feel like there is that separation amongst Brandon. I don't think it's like a done deal, and like Nate can't catch him, but it does feel like that there is that separation a little bit. And I think it is. It's not the fact that it's enough to comment on shows you it is at least somewhat of a sizable separation. I'm not saying it's like a different stratosphere, but it's enough to at least make notion of it. And it's impressive that Brandon has found himself in this position, but he's clearly been the best performer so far and deserves the front runner for the backup job, at least at this point. And whatever Bryson Barnes' weird situation kind of factors into this whole thing too.
Well, and I'm also gonna like asterisk that.
Yeah.
Witt said, there is separation, but also Nate has been dealing with an undisclosed
Yes.
injury. So is the separation because Nate has been hampered with injury? Is it what is it? So I'm gonna asterisk the Nate, Brandon has separated himself from Nate argument. Witt said it happened, but at the same time, how much of a separation truly is it because of Nate's injury, which is undisclosed. We don't know what it is. So that's just how it is with Utah football. As long as it's not season ending, we don't know what it is. But I think at practice on Tuesday, you saw majority of the time you saw quarterbacks, it was Brandon. Brandon was the guy who was out there who was doing majority of the drills and stuff. And he looks really good, but then he made some mistakes. Also, one of them, he threw an interception. It was not his fault, in my opinion. He was going for a corner route to, I think, Money Parks, I think is who he was going to, and Justin Medlock just read his eyes and just jumped the route and intercepted it in the end zone. But Brandon's making some really, really, really good throws. You've seen sideline throws to Vela, you've seen sideline throws to Luca Caldarella, you've seen sideline throws to Money Parks, you've seen sideline throws to Mikey Matthews. Mikey literally, Brandon locked eyes with him on another play later in practice, and Mikey laid it all out. He looked like he dragged his toes in, but the refs on site said no. If that would have been a live game and I'm reviewing it, because from where I was at, it looked like it was a touchdown. But it's good. And the thing is that I think I want to see more from Brandon in terms of it. I want to see more of his ability, his run ability, because we know what Nate is capable of doing when he needs to get flushed, when he got flushed out of the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what Brandon is likely to do in those situations. And I think separation is like Witt said, if they don't have whoever's going to be the number 2 by the end of spring, at least they'll have a head start of who it's going to be heading into fall. And I think that's something else that's very important, is not jumping to a rash conclusion just based off the situations you've seen. And they're both still young quarterbacks. They're both still going to make mistakes. That's just how this thing is going to roll and how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, mistakes are all part of the growing and learning process for these guys overall. And one of the interesting things is it is a battle between two young guys right now, because you got Bryson Barnes out there, who has been with this team for a few years now, but is in this interesting scenario where they're just limiting his reps. He's the guy who so I feel like if the season started tomorrow, and let's say Utah's game against Florida was a week from right now, I still feel like Bryson would be the starter. I feel like Coach Witt trusts him the most, but I think we're in this really interesting scenario where it's like they recognize Bryson is pretty much at his ceiling. Like Bryson is Bryson. We know what Bryson is, but with Brandon and Nate as well, they have a chance to leap him and eventually should be able to leap him. So I think they would like it if that happens sooner rather than later. But it just makes the whole situation very interesting to me because once again, I feel like right now the best backup quarterback, if the game was to be played today on this Utah roster, is Bryson Barnes.
I would also say I think Bryson would be on a short leash.
Agreed.
Like a very short leash. Just because like when the times he was called upon last year weren't the best showings. Like Washington State was the game he started, and it was at times it looked like he was trying to throw that game away. And so I think he would be on a short leash. I'm not saying if it was 1-3 and out, and then Whit would be like, "Hey, you're done. We're putting Nate or Brandon is in." But I think that it would be like, okay, well, if you can't, if like this is not if like we're not working, like if these things aren't developing, like we're gonna try something else. We're gonna go back to the drawing board. We're gonna maybe put Brandon in there. We're gonna maybe put Nate in there, because I just think that and again, like I've talked about this before, is like the 20 minutes of practice that we as media see is not, we're judging based on what those 20 minutes are. We're not seeing practice in its entirety. So like the 20 minutes we see, like Brandon could have been 7 of 7 for 200 yards. Let's just say, I know that's like an insane stat, but like let's just say it's that. But then prior to us getting there, he could have thrown 14 incomplete passes in a row and thrown 3 interceptions. So we're judging this just based on a small section of an entire however many hour practice, however long practice is. Um like how it's a small sample size
Mhm.
of things, because one week when we went and saw practice, like Bryson looked really, really, really not good.
Mhm.
I think he got sacked on 3 consecutive plays. So I think again, it's just small sample sizes. Like the spring game is going to be like not a huge indicator, but I think the spring game is going to finally give us like a benchmark or a ballpark of where things are. Because like when they do thud, like you're not really seeing a lot of things. When you see them, like when quarterbacks aren't live, you see guys pulling up on the defense as soon as they break through the offensive line. So when you're in that spring game, and I'm not saying all the quarterbacks are going to be live, because chances are like some of them probably might not be live. You're just, it's so complicated to like talk about a quarterback 2 situation when you're not seeing the full, like since like the
Mhm.
full scope of things, like the full practice time, and you're not seeing them running and tucking it and like stuff like that.
You're absolutely right because we don't have any game reps for Brandon Rose. We have pretty much only running reps for Nate Johnson. Yes, he
We have
threw
one
20.
pass. Hey, we have one pass.
Yes, but
We
the
have one
design of it
pass.
made it yes, and I'm a huge Nate Johnson fan. I love Nate Johnson, but the design of that was designed to be a very easy look, wide
Oh,
open
yeah.
Hayden Kendall. So it was set up for him to succeed. So we haven't seen either of those guys have to go in and really operate under duress. And speaking of duress, to your point, Bryson was not good under duress in the Rose Bowl at all, which is probably a large reason they're looking at this and trying to figure out, hey, if we can get someone in there that does handle that better, that's who we're going to want to play. But
Mhm.
we have heard a couple things about Brandon throwing a couple interceptions. We know Coach Witt, that's the number one thing. Don't turn the ball over. So that's going to make it very interesting. And I couldn't agree with you more about spring ball because that is a full time of a game, of a practice game, whatever you want to call it. We get to see of these guys going at. So that is going to be so important and very interesting to look at and see. So that's where we sit with the quarterbacks right now. We're going to talk about it, come back and talk about some of the other positions in a moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. With FanDuel Sportsbook, the NBA season is heating up, and now is the perfect time to head over to FanDuel Sportsbook and get in on a ton of great offers where they have props, parlays, all kinds of things to help you get into the action. Only a couple games left in the regular season, so you know the teams are going to be going hard, trying to get their postseason jump started. And there's great options at FanDuel because they have give no new customers a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And you can bet on everything from the money line to the points scored to threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockdown. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Sammy, as I struggle to get through this,
You were fighting through that one. you were clawing through that one,
Yeah.
bud.
As we look, speaking of clawing through, Utah had to do that yesterday in spring practice because my gosh, the weather and everything that was coming down. It's not
I'm
your typical spring ball, but you
I'm
were up
over
there.
it.
What were some of
Vele
the
said he's like, I feel like I'm prepping for a bowl game.
Yeah,
Like, it's like, no,
I
it's
know it's the
April. Like,
It's
stop.
we're getting closer to the middle of April too, and it's still coming down. So it's crazy they have to deal with this. Just based on the reports and everything that were coming out, I personally was really encouraged by the positive reviews that Steve gave in his article on UteZone about Utah Spring Ball 23 Week 3 viewing session. If you guys want to check that out, head over to UteZone. I was really encouraged about the rave reviews he was giving Chase Kennedy and Logan Fano, talking about how they popped. You were up there yesterday. Who were some of the players and some of the things you noticed?
So some of my notes are actually combined with Steve's. So it's
There you
kind
go.
of like a 1-2 note thing. But like I talked about this already, like Justin Medlock, like he looks really
Yeah,
good and he's running with the ones. They're usually doing that three-backer set with him, Karene, and Lander. And I think that's a really good set. Like I think
yeah.
the three of them out there is so good. It's
Mhm.
so good. I love the versatility you get from all three of those because Lander, I think, in my opinion, is the best of the three in coverage. Again, we haven't seen what Justin can do in coverage. Um, but Lander's my personal favorite in coverage, but Justin is just so fast. He's so physical. He's so athletic that I think he's gonna have a big season for Utah. I just think that it's in the makings for him. That's something that really stood out to me. The other thing that stood out to me was Elijah Davis was taking reps with like the ones. He was out there with like I think he was out there with Vaughn and Battle.
Uh-huh.
So that's interesting. He was in the slot. He's a redshirt freshman. Um, that's good seeing him out there. And then I think I don't want to say he's a placeholder, but I think he's getting a jump on the battle that we're probably going to see in fall camp between him and Smith Snowden for that position.
Yeah.
And then I honestly think we can close the book on the whole who's going to replace Clayton Isabel's situation because I think it's Sione Vaki's.
Yes.
There's nobody within an arm's reach in my opinion. Sione's the only one who's taking like reps with the ones that we've
Yeah.
seen. Blue Stewart was out there with the twos, which was really cool. And I think they had one. I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to. There was one package that they subbed Blue in and took Battle out for like a deep safety.
Yeah.
Um, which is really good considering that like last year you kind of have I don't want to say a liability when you're in the deep safety zone.
Mhm.
Because RJ Hubert had some really great plays, but he also had some
Yeah, a
really,
lot of up
really,
and
really,
downs. Mhm.
really bad misses.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's just like how much to read into that. If it's like oh hey we're just trying to prepare like for this situation or like what it is, but seeing Blue out there was really cool. um I'm a defensive girl, so I love watching just like linebacker sets, defensive
Yep.
lines. Like I love watching those units and what they're coming out with, but it's really good from what like I've collected and viewed at practice. So but yeah.
Yeah, gotta be encouraging about just the strides guys have made. To your point on Medlock, like, he's a guy who didn't play last year, so when guys
Mhm.
don't play, it's like, what are they gonna look like? And, oh, no, he's definitely ready for the moment. That's the really encouraging thing. I think one
He's
thing you
also
just
he's
mentioned.
also gained weight. He's gained weight. Like
Yes.
he's bigger now than he was when he came into the program last year.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he's bonding with the strength conditioning program and everything there. You mentioned Sione Vaki being him, and then obviously we'll get Nate Ritchie up to speed, but we know that Cole Bishop said at the safety spot too. We had Nathan on earlier on yesterday's show talking about just safety depth overall. Is that a concern you have just watching practice that it is Sione by such a clear mile, or do you think that is look, Sione's a special player, so like he should be
Yeah.
the starter, but like if he goes down, are you concerned at all?
No, because Jaden Pearson's in the wings. And Jaden Pearson has made some very, very, very big plays. this season. He will fly around the field. I think it was a couple weeks ago at practice. He literally chased down Brandon Rose from sideline to sideline. Like, he was on the far sideline, Brandon was on the near sideline, and he just tracked him down and just sacked him. So I'm not worried. I know why people would be, like, concerned possibly with the possibility of things, but, um, I personally am not. I think Morgan Scalley will have his guys ready. Um, and it's again, we still have the next transfer portal window that's gonna open in a couple of weeks. So, like, if safety concern is something really that the
Yep.
coaches are thinking about, I wouldn't be surprised if they're reaching out to some guys who are safeties in the portal just to see their interest, see what they can do. But I'm not that's not my position of concern right now. That's not where I'm like, what
Do
happened
you have one?
situation.
It sounded like you did. So I
Well,
asked.
it's like corner is one that has consistently plagued me just because of how, like, they've been really good, but then at times they get so depleted so fast, a la the Rose Bowl, the
I know.
Ohio State Rose Bowl, and Mekhi Bernard's playing
Hi.
corner. Um, but then we got the iconic "I play running back" quote out of that, so I think it's kind of like a win it's like a win-lose situation, you know? But corner has always been one that's kind of concerned me, like, because you have Fabian Marks who missed last season with an injury. Travis has had issues staying healthy.
Yep.
Um, Zamaya has been playing really good, but then Kane Savage puts his name in the portal
Yeah.
earlier this week. So you have battle, and then you get Smith Snowden in this summer. So um,
Yeah,
I
CJ Walker comes in as well.
yeah, you get CJ Blocker as well. So it's like corner is the one that's kind of, in my opinion, I'm a little bit like
Mhm.
about, but, like, I think you're in a really good position because whoever wins that QB2 battle, I think, is gonna be very well prepared for what they're gonna be walking into. Um, Running back, I think, you get Chris Curry back, obviously. You bring in a really good running back class. You get JJ back, you have Glover back, you have Mackay. Running back's not a concern to me. I think the offensive line is meshing really well right now, and the twos are getting really good reps as well. So I'm not concerned about the offensive line. Tight end, Brant and Thomas, you have them back. You have Mickey Sugaturanga making the move over there. Um, you have Isaac Vaha, who's back from injury, who I've heard nothing but really great things about so far. And then you get CJ Jacobson coming in this summer. And then
Go with
wide
Eddie
receiver.
too. Those look great.
Oh yeah, and you also get Munir. Like, you have Munir, you have a
Yeah.
lot of bodies in there.
Mhm.
Um, but then wide receiver, obviously, you think it's the same thing. Like, you have a very deep, very deep, very deep room. Um, with Devon and Money and Mackay and, Mikey and, like, just Luca Calderola, Taekwon Gilmore. You have a very good group. So, um, I'm not I think corner and, like, if you have to rank them, corners probably for me, it's like
Yeah.
corners 1, safeties 2, but,
Mhm.
like, this year is not, like, any, like, glaring, like, "Oh my god, like, what is to happen? If this
Yeah.
happens, what are we doing?" situations.
Yeah, 100%. I think and you make a great point too, just talk about the concerns and everything. Like, we will eventually have to dive into this more when, just after spring ball, and we've gotten to look at everyone. I think for me, concern-wise, I'll say I look, the defensive ends have looked good in spring ball. It's still different come season. I think the pass rush is going to be at least a little bit of a concern for me until we see how it plays out week 1 against Florida. Speaking
Mhm.
of Florida, look, if one of these guys, whether it is Brandon Rose or Nate Johnson, is starting their first game against look, Florida's not what they used to be, and they're not an
Mhm.
SEC powerhouse, but they're still a tough team, very physical in the trenches. I mean,
Yeah.
they only have a 400-pound defensive tackle that's going to be coming into
Yeah.
Wistrcill Stadium right away. So it's a lot to deal with there. And as much as I like Satala Laumea, especially as a run blocker, it's pass blocking on the left side is a totally different animal. He had his ups and downs in pass protection.
Mhm.
That's going to be the other one that's very interesting to watch and see. But those are overall, I think for both of us, we're
Mhm.
not majorly concerned
I'm
about any of
not.
those things, which is good. They're just kind of question marks we still have, which look, this isn't like no, every football program has questions, so it's not a
Oh,
bad
yeah.
place to be in.
Well, and on that left side of the line, if you really wanna get into, like, how to make sure that left side's protected, if it gets to that point, like, Thomas Yasmin has talked about how he wants to become a true blocking tight end this year.
Yeah.
Like, get Thomas out there, throw him in the deep end. I'm not like throw him in the deep end. I'm pretty sure Mickey knows how to he talked to me about it when I interviewed him for UteZone this week. He said that him playing defensive end and then moving to tight end kind of gives him an upper hand because he knows what hand placements and hand techniques
Yeah,
defensive ends are gonna pull. So if like you put Mickey on that end, you put Thomas on that end, like there's ways to combat poor pass protection on the left side. I'm not saying that like that's gonna last all season and that's gonna be like the end all be all, but I think like knowing that you have tight ends who can like help in that situation, I think should be cause like some like relief.
absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely a nice thing to have insurance, and it's okay to have to chip and help out a little bit too, especially just while Satawa would get acclimated hypothetically. But I
Mhm.
trust Jim Harding. I think we both do.
Oh
So
yeah.
hopefully it'll all be good come week 1. So that's gonna do it for football news. But we did get a little bit of Utah women's basketball news with Taya Sidbury entering the portal. She averaged 4.6 points per game for the Utes this past season, 28 games off the bench. She was a true freshman, played a little bit, great presence in the locker room, Sammy overall. But
Mhm.
look, this is one where you look at it and you're like, why did she leave? Probably minutes related, right? Because
Yeah.
this is a Utah women's team that returns everyone, and it makes sense that she might want a little bit more playing time. It's a bummer because she did go to Judge, so kind of losing out on a local product. But this more so just speaks to how deep this Utah women's basketball team is.
Yeah, deep and also how much I think Lynn trusts the girls who she has on the court. Because she mainly subbed in for Jenna, if I remember correctly. And like Jenna's a beast. Like Jenna knows what she's doing. Jenna can like she's just so fun to watch. Even though we also saw how heartbreaking that like end of the season was for Jenna.
Yep.
Um, I'm not like I personally thought that there was gonna be 1 to 2 transfers out of this program. None of them are gonna no, I thought none will be major, and
Yeah.
again, this is just me, like, like, looking at rosters, like, I'm not, like,
Just what
confirming.
makes sense.
It's what makes sense. I'm not saying that this is what's gonna happen, but I always thought that it would be maybe 1 to 2 girls who didn't see as much time possibly taking their talents elsewhere, and yeah, like you mentioned, it sucks to lose a local product like Taya, but at the same time, like, Utah fans are really great at this. You just say, "Thank you for all you've done for this program," and you just wish her the best because I think it takes a lot for a freshman to realize that she's buried in the depth chart, um, and it's not like a rash jumping to conclusions in my opinion, because I think she kind of saw that Jenna's doing her thing, and then just how good this team is as a whole. If she wanted to see minutes, she's gonna have to go somewhere that they need someone of her caliber, someone who is a scorer. She's really good from the field. She will drive you and then just like take it to the rim. I will miss her blocks. She's a blocking machine, but at the same time, like she's got to do what's best for her. So
Yeah, it's not detrimental to the team's success in
no.
2023, 2024. Still, it was a key contributor, did a lot of nice things for this team, but someone who's not irreplaceable and makes sense that she just wants to get some more minutes. But either way, Lynn Roberts has turned this Utah women's basketball program into a juggernaut. So great opportunity for them to recruit. There's little doubt that they won't find someone who's ready to step up, and that person could even be on the roster. That's where you never know how it's going to play out. But in
Mhm.
Lynn, we trust. Sammy, if people want more Utah women's basketball or Utah football content, where should they head over to check out?
You can follow me on Twitter at S_Mora99. There's a lot of football. Gymnastics is heading into nationals. There's a lot of gymnastics content on my page. Basketball as stuff comes down, just regular Utah athletics related content on Twitter. But if you want to actually like read like long form like content, you can find me on over on UteZone.com. There's a lot of subscriber and VIP exclusive interviews and like information you can get on over there. And just join a really great like Utah football community or Utah athletics actually, because everyone on that board loves Utah women's basketball, loves Utah men's basketball, loves the Red Rocks, loves Utah baseball. So yeah, Ute Zone, come join us.
Make sure you guys head over to that. Also, if you're in the market for a second listen every day, we recommend you check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast, where hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Pratt and bring everything you need to know on and off the court. The offseason may be here, but there's a ton of transfer news and still reflecting on UConn's big win to go over. That's what Locked On College Basketball is for. Plus, you can hear from big name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Big thanks to Sammy for joining us once again. Sammy will be back with us next week talking Utah gymnastics. They prepare for the national championship. So look forward to that episode. Sammy, always great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes, but we'll be back with Porter Larson tomorrow talking more Utah spring ball.